and so on and so forth. And the video was automatically muted because of copyright. Anyway, well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Anyway, I knew when I heard that in the movie, I was like, okay, this had to be the intro. There you go. So anyway, hello there, CriterioNate here, number 493, Matteo Garon's Gomorrah. 2008, 137 minutes, color surround, and Italian with English subtitles, 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio. Well, an almost perfect movie. It's not a perfect movie. It was one of those movies where I definitely struggled to figure out what was going on. It said, oh, there's 5 stories that are together, and I thought the characters intertwined at some point. They do slightly, but for the most part, all the 5 stories that are involved in this movie are pretty separate. Characters are mentioned in other stories, but overall they're kind of, again, apart from each other. So this movie is about Italian gangs, and it's basically the, oh god, what are they called? They're called like what are they called? It says something on here, the Gomorrah gangs. And it's basically the biggest one, the bigger Italian underworlds. I guess are still going on to this day. They still exist. And it's about these 6, 7 people who live in the underworld and how it affects their daily lives. It starts off with basically this kind of war starting in a tanning salon. These gangsters are killed, and it starts this big feud between different oppositions and all that. Then we get the title sequence, and then we get the characters. They're all kind of we jump back and forth between the characters. There's Don Sino, Don Sino. I don't have the booklet with me, so I may have to look it up. And they don't even print the credits, because it's all in the booklet. There's the Don, who is this money collector. He collects money from like the rent of the people who are renting in this apartment building and otherwise, and he's very quiet and all that, and eventually he's forced to make a big decision when the opposition threatens to kill him, and he offers to go over their side. They don't want him on their side. They want his associates dead, and so he has to make a decision there. Don Ciro, that's his name. There's also, oh god, what are the two knuckleheads? Marco and Ciro, who's also known as Sweet Pea, and they're these 2 young punks who love gangster movies and have a really idealized idea of gangsters and all that, and they're all into Scarface, and they're always quoting it, and they're all big talk and all that. And so they end up robbing these immigrants, and one of the head mob bosses find out about them and tells them to stop it, because it's making them look bad, and they don't stop. And in fact, later on they find these guns that these gangsters have buried. They dig up the guns and proceed to shoot them off in the marsh in an iconic scene, and end up robbing a store. And let's just say it doesn't end well for them. There's also Toto, who's this young 13-year-old boy who witnesses a robbery and ends up returning drugs and a gun to the gang. They end up initiating him by shooting him with a bulletproof vest, and he ends up doing work for them. Even he's just a young grocery boy, and he ends up betraying one of his customers in the end. And who else? There's Pasquale, who is he is a designer. He's a tailor, and he ends up getting a job teaching the Chinese people how to sew. However, the only problem is the Chinese people that he's working with are on the other side of his gang or whatever, his people, you know. And so he has to do it in secret. The people he's working with, he has to hide in the trunk of the car as he's being delivered to his job and all that. And it doesn't end well with him. He ends up becoming a truck driver at the end. And I'll make one point, and if you guys have seen this movie, you know what I'm going to have to call out, you know, but I'll make it at the end. There's also Roberto and Franco, and they are these waste management people. They basically are in charge of dumping illegal wastes like chromium and aluminum, I think, and asbestos, whatever, into the swamps and countryside and all that, basically poisoning the crops and all that. And at one point, these chemicals are spilled on a driver, and rather than call someone to help him, Franco ends up hiring a bunch of kids to drive the trucks, because the truck drivers have basically revolted and don't want to drive anymore. And Roberto basically at the end just has to stand up for himself and realizes he can't do this anymore. He can't keep poisoning people. So that's basically it. Most of the people in this movie kind of just realize that they've gone too far and need to get out. Don Ciro's fate is uncertain. Basically almost everyone's fate is uncertain except for Marco and Ciro, who, spoiler alert, die at the end. They're tricked into making a job where they end up getting killed by the mob bosses who warned them to stay away, as well as the guys who hired them. It was all a big trap. And there's a epilogue which shows all these facts about the Italian underworld. What are they called? The Gomorrah and all that. And yeah, so that's basically the movie. I enjoyed most of it. Hearing Enigma was great. After Marco and Ciro end up robbing an arcade when they find out they're out of money, and they end up spending all of it at a strip club. And at the strip club, you hear Enigma's Sadness Part 1, which is one of my favorite songs from one of my favorite albums. And so hearing that was great. And overall, I thought the characters were really interesting. I thought Toto's character was very intriguing. What he had, just the fact that he was a young boy and he was like just willing to go through with such violence, at such a young age. I thought that was really cool. And Don Ciro being just the strong, silent type kind of character. I think his evolution was the most interesting. I thought he was really cool. Everybody in this movie was really cool. I thought Marco and Ciro were, the comic relief, and they were just obviously, you could tell they were going to die. I knew they were going to die, even without looking up a summary or anything like that. I knew they were going to end had a fatal fate, for lack of a better term. Yes. So the only thing I really didn't like about this movie was at the end of Pasquale's movie. So Pasquale ends up becoming a truck driver at the end of the movie, and he's in a bar or something, or in a diner, and end up being cleaned up, taking a pit stop, and the TV is displaying an award ceremony, and he finds out that Scarlett Johansson is wearing one of his dresses. You only see her for a split second, but it's a split second too. It's a whole second too long. Realizing that maybe knowing that, I guess because his dresses are counterfeit, she's wearing basically a counterfeit dress. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, the book was based on the book. There was a book that this movie was based on. It was written by what's his name? Roberto Saviano. And it was actually about Angelina Jolie wearing a counterfeit dress. However, they could get the rights to the footage or something, and so they ended up getting Scarlett Johansson wearing a dress that apparently wasn't counterfeit. It was actually a real dress and all that. But yeah, so when I found out that was happening, I'm like, oh god, no, I can't get this an A now. Sorry, you just really couldn't. She just can't. I just can't shake this stupid woman out of any movie I watch, you know. So yeah, it's not gonna be an A because of that. But everything else I think was very good. Again, it was kind of hard to follow, and I would like to watch it again because I did enjoy, you know, watching all the characters, you know, go through their routines and all that, and figure out their lives and all that. So it was still entertaining on that aspect. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about it. It was still a very entertaining movie, very informative movie, a very dark movie, and one that if you are interested in seeing what's going on, and it's, you know, only 10 years old, you know, to this day. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out a movie about, you know, I don't know what's going on in Italy right now, as far as the Gomorrah are, but I guess they're still active. So watch out, you know. B+. I was gonna give it an A-, but Scarlett Johansson's appearance demotes it to a whole letter grade. So if she wasn't in this movie, I'd have given it an A. Honestly, I'd have given the movie an A. But I'm sorry, it was a misstep, you know. So B+. Supplements. Trailer on the first one. Martin Scorsese. What the fuck? Like, I think I'm kind of getting sick of IFC, seeing all these IFC films too. I think Christmas Tale was an IFC production, or at least the American version, and just, you know, having all these, you know, American voices, English voices speaking and all that, it's just kind of annoying. So anyway, Martin Scorsese, I'm like, what the hell? When I saw his name at the beginning, I'm like, oh jeez. Well, this is gonna be kind of annoying, but still. If you look past that and Scarlett Johansson, it's a good movie, but anyway. So yeah, trailer. Disc 2 is an hour-long documentary called 5 Stories about the making of Gomorrah, which was produced around the time of the DVD. There's a new interview with Matteo Garrone and Tony Servillo, who played Franco. There's also an interview with Roberto Saviano, who wrote the book. And there's also the interviews with other interviews with Tony Servillo, which I think where he reads part of Gomorrah. There's also an interview with Gian Felice Imparato, who played Don Ciro, and Salvatore Cantalupo, who plays Pasquale. And there's also about 12 minutes of deleted scenes as well. One of the best being the first one, featuring Toto and his friends, like cheering on a mob man who got arrested, and they're like cheering him from the freeway or something, and they're like cheering him, and they're calling the cops enemy number one, a bunch of pigs and all that, and to see him, the mob sees him, they're like raising their hands as the like police are taking him into the prison and all that, and so that was kind of fun. The rest of the scenes, yeah, really don't contribute a lot to the plot, so I can see why they're deleted, you know. So. Anyway, Gomorrah, B+, almost perfect. So anyway, that's it for today. Tomorrow, Downhill Racer, and then throughout the rest of the week, Golden Age of Television, and then probably Shay, unless I somehow get the Chantal Ackerman set, in which way Scooby May. We'll probably do Shay before Chantal Ackerman. The Chantal Ackerman set will probably be next week, or next weekend, the weekend of the 7th, 8th, or something. You know, I don't know how long it'll take the Eclipser to get it done, but sooner than later, I hope. So anyway, and yeah, and then, you know, as I pick up some more DVDs or Blu-rays, we'll talk about the Barnes & Noble sale and others. So that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Don't cast Scarlett Johansson. Quit casting Scarlett Johansson in your movies. And shoot, don't join the gangs. You know, stay out of the mob. You know, and if you do join the mob, don't be all gung ho and steal guns from them. You know, and don't be all creepy in strip clubs and try to have sex with the strippers, because there's no sex in the champagne room. Chris Rock taught us that. So anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow for Downhill Racer. And until then, goodbye.